What is the true essence of freedom? That is what we're going to talk about in this video. It's me again, Teacher Jules, your wisdom amazing facilitator of learning. Please join me in this wisdom amazing journey as we investigate the ultimate causes, reasons, and principles which govern all things. All right, so last quarter, I have discussed more about logic, right? Okay, so when we talk about logic, it is what? A branch of philosophy which deals with the correct reasoning or thinking and argumentation. Okay, now, in this quarter, I'm gonna focus more on ethics. Okay, so when we say ethics, I know that you are familiar with this term. When we say ethics, it is what? Also called as moral philosophy because it deals with what? Moral principles. Okay. All right, so before we start, let me ask you simple questions. All right? Okay, so when you woke up this morning, what did you do first? Did you wash your hand, took a bath, or immediately walk towards the dining table to take your breakfast? Okay, now, what made you do so? Who decided, another question, who decided what you wanted to do? If your answer is yourself, then you already have what? Some practical application of freedom. All right, so why did I ask you these questions? Because our topic for today is about the meaning of freedom and its kind, okay? All right, so, but before we proceed to our lesson, let me give you a short activity first. Okay? All right. Here we go. For our activity one, on a piece of paper, write down a list of things that you would do if you were granted absolute freedom for a day. You can write as many as you want. Okay? So you can do this while listening or while watching to this video lesson. Okay? And number two, imagine that all the leaders in the world would put up a global election asking everyone if they wanted absolute freedom to be granted to everyone. Now the question is, would you give a yes vote or no vote? All right, so you don't need to share your answer to the whole class because this is only applicable during face-to-face classes. Okay. All right. Now, let's analyze your answer. Assuming that you are already done, okay, with the activity. Okay. Let's analyze your answer. Now, the question is, should freedom be absolute? Another question, if freedom should be limited, what would be its limits? Now, who should determine the limits of freedom? An authoritarian leader, our individual selves, or the great majority or great majority? Okay? You can just answer that silently, okay, while listening. Now, the question is, what is freedom? Okay? Now, there are two concepts that will help us fully understand freedom. Okay, number one. Okay, let's talk about the two concepts. for us to fully understand freedom. Number one is the freedom itself. Okay? All right, so freedom is generally defined as having the ability to act or change without constraint. That's according to Wikipedia, right? Someone or something is free if he or it can do or change anything effortlessly and responsibly. A person or animal has the freedom to do things that will not, in theory or practice, be prevented by other forces. Okay, but freedom has its what? Particular limitations. Okay? Beyond himself because he is bound by consequences of his actions either to promote goodness or destruction to himself or other persons. Okay, let me give you an example. Your teacher gave you a pen and a paper. Assuming that I gave you a pen and a paper. Okay? The goal here is to make these two items useful for you. Now, you can either use the pen to write a letter or draw something on the paper. You can also transform the paper into a paper airplane, okay, and write a message on it and throw it in the air until finally lands to another person, right? Okay, using your freedom as an instrument to create action without constraint is a true meaning of freedom. Okay, all right, so another one, number two, the free will. Okay? So when we talk about free will, it is the ability to choose different courses of actions without what? Restrictions. So if we exercise out free will, we get to decide on things that will lead to results. All right? Either good or bad, or beneficial or not. Okay? So the actions that we do depend on the values we uphold and the acceptance, okay, and expectations the community will live in. All right. Now, what is freedom? Based on the concepts that I have mentioned. So, when we talk about freedom, it is the power or right to act, speak, or think as you want without hindrance or restraint. All right. Okay. So, hindi magalaw. Freedom is an intrinsic and essential property of the person. Okay? So this means that the human person by nature is a free being and that it is in his or her nature to seek wisdom. All right. Now, there are kinds of freedom. Okay? We have the first one, the physical freedom. All right, so when we talk about physical freedom, it refers to the absence of any physical restraint. The person is free to move wherever he or she goes. Okay? All right, just bear with me, guys. He or she is not impeded in his or her actions by any physical force, as we have mentioned earlier. Granted that the person has natural limitations. So physical freedom enables him or her to act and move in a determined manner. You cannot be everywhere at once, but your freedom allows you to move one place to another and to go wherever you want to go. Okay, that is physical freedom. Okay, another one is the psychological freedom. Okay, so when we talk about psychological freedom, it is also called as freedom of expressions. The person performs actions that he considers right and wise. Okay. All right, so in other words, the person is free to perform actions that he or she considers right and use. A person who is also free to act or not to act. Okay? So psychological freedom is innate. Okay? All right. It cannot be denied to a person. Okay, the another one is the moral freedom. Okay, so when we talk about moral freedom, okay, let me check. It's already 12:10. Okay, moral freedom refers to as freedom in manner that upholds human dignity and goodness. The person is not an object of others. What? Freedom. Because the keyword there is freedom. Okay, so a person must use his or her freedom to grow as a person. Okay, a person becomes freer when he or she uses freedom well, but becomes less free when he or she uses in a wicked way. All right. Now, the question is, where does freedom rooted? Okay? Yan. Of course, self-determination. It's rooted from self-determination. What do we mean by self-determination? Self-determination is the ability or power to make decisions for yourself, especially the power of a nation to decide how it will be governed, the ability to become. Okay? Another one is the exercise of intellect. Okay? The process to manifest his or her ideas and aspirations. And of course, the third one is rooted from free will. The freedom rooted from free will. When we talk about free will, it is the ability to decide what to do independently or any outside influence. Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about the nature of freedom. So, it proceeds from the intellect and will. And of course, it is based on reason, which he will follow. When a man makes decision, he is free, right? And man is accountable for what he is doing because he is conscious of what he is doing it and how he is doing. Okay. All right. According to Aristotle, okay, thinking is volitional. Okay? He believes that every individual has freedom to exercise his or her own will. Okay? Ayan, before we proceed to activity 2. Okay, let us recall the ideas of Aristotle to give light to the question about freedom. Okay? So, when we talk about volation, because according to him, thinking is volitional, right? So, what do we mean by volation? So, when we say volation or will, okay, is the cognitive process by which an individual decides on and commits to a particular course of action. Okay. So, this means that our will is at work whenever we decides on and what? Commits to a particular course of action. Okay? So, Aristotle further elaborates, okay, the relationship between will and the intellect, okay, or reasoning. Okay, by saying that the will is what? Is meaningless if it is apart from the intellect. It's according to Ramos 2016. Okay, this is true, right? So, for how could ideas be translated into action when a person does not will it? Therefore, the intellect guides the will in making choices. Okay, it goes to show that the absence of what? The intellect or reasoning means absence of will. Okay. Now let's have another activity. Okay, imagine you won the contest. Okay, the contest. And you were asked to choose one of the following prizes: a luxury car with a non-transferable contract, a 4-year college educational scholarship at any school in the Philippines, or a 1-month expense paid trip to 3 European countries. And which prize will you choose? Okay, it's the question now. What factors made you come up with that decision? Okay, only you can answer that question. Now let's learn about it. In choosing which prize to get, you have already exercised your freedom to make choices, okay, to make decisions. However, it is important to realize that, as shown in the example, the choices you make have corresponding consequences. Okay? So there are corresponding consequences. Okay, for example, if you if you choose the luxury car, the high cost of maintenance fees and gasoline may burden you. The European trip would also fun, but seems too impractical. The European trip would also fun, but seems too impractical, right? Correct? Okay, 4-year scholarship would have been the best choice because it is long-term and useful. Okay, so freedom is not abstract. It is exercised through our choices. So remember this, guys. Choices have consequences. In making choices, some things are given up while others are obtained. Okay, so in our next video, I'm gonna elaborate this statement. Choices have consequences. Okay, in our next video. Now, there are two elements of freedom. Okay, we have the first one, voluntariness. Okay, and another one is the responsibility. Okay. Now, when we talk about voluntariness, it is our ability to act out our free will and self-determination. Okay? It means that a person may decide to act or not to act, and these decisions are made out of his or her own free will. Okay? It also means that a person may act even if he or she is not required or called to take action. Okay, another one is the responsibility. Okay, so it comes from the Greek word, from the two words response and ability. Okay, it's not a Greek word. I'm sorry. Okay, so it is the ability to respond if you're going to connect these two words. Okay? Now, the question is, respond to what? Okay, to a need or to a call for help, for understanding, for love, or for forgiveness. Okay. All right, so voluntariness and responsibility go hand in hand in determining a person's freedom. In any situation where a person is forced to do an action against his or her will, it follows that he or she cannot be held responsible for his or her involuntary actions. Okay, in our next video, I'm going to discuss about acts, the difference between human acts and acts of man. Okay. All right. Now the question is, what do we mean when we say freedom is experienced through the act of making choices? Okay. All right. So when we make choices to do a particular action, we can never go back and redo our actions and make another choices. That is the sad part, right? In making decisions. Okay? Real life is not a movie where we can stop and rewind events and get a second take on the situation. Alright? That's okay, pumalakpak naman. Di ba? Buti sana kung tama yung one. Okay. Sorry for the background noise. Somebody clapped. Okay. Gave me a big round of applause. Thank you. I'm just kidding. Okay. So therefore, it is very important that we exercise caution and prudence and reflect on our possible courses of action. That is why self-reflection is vital in the proper exercise of human freedom. Okay. So last quarter in my previous videos, okay, I have also discussed about reflection. Okay. All right. We can therefore examine our actions, habits, and behavior by asking ourselves the following questions. What should I do? Why should I do it? What will happen if I do it? How will my actions or behavior affect myself, others, and my surroundings? Will my actions or behavior be considered correct, proper, beneficial, and moral? Now, those are the questions that you need to ask before you make any decisions, okay? Or making any choices. All right, so let's have an assessment, okay? We are now in the last part of our video assessment. Now, what I would like you to do is write the letter of your answers in your activity notebook or any piece of paper. Okay, if you're not a student, you can just do it in any piece of paper. Okay? Anyway, to my students, I have provided an activity sheet already. Okay? Now, number one, the word refers to the ability to make choices and perform actions. It is an intrinsic and essential property of the human person. Letter A, freedom. Letter B, free will. Letter C, psychological freedom. Letter D, voluntariness. Okay? Number two, this is a type of freedom from physical restraint. A, moral freedom. B, physical freedom. Letter C, psychological freedom. And letter D, hello. And letter D, voluntariness. Again, letter A, moral freedom. B, physical freedom. Letter C, psychological freedom. Letter D, voluntariness. Number three. This is the kind of freedom which allows a person to perform actions which he or she considers right and wise. Letter A, freedom of choosing. Letter B, voluntariness. Letter C, psychological freedom. Letter D, moral freedom. Okay, I'm not going to give you a timer, okay? Because you can just pause this video. Okay, number four, it is the ability to act out one's free will and self-determination. Letter A, voluntarism. Letter B, responsibility. Letter C, psychological freedom. Letter D, voluntariness. Okay, so this is just a self-assessment. Okay, number five, this word means that the person is being accountable for his or her actions and their consequences. Letter A, responsibly. Letter B, responsibility. Letter C, irresponsibleness. Letter D, voluntariness. Okay? All right, 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Okay, time's up. Let's see if you have learned something from this video, okay, from my lecture. Okay. The correct answer is, for number one, of course, freedom. Okay? The number two, physical freedom. All right? Okay, if you got it right, then congratulations. Hanap ko natin. Okay. Number three. The correct answer is letter C. Okay, and number four, letter D. Okay, and number five, letter B. Okay? Now, if you got the correct answer, then congratulations. Wala. All right, for our last activity, this would be your assignment. You can do this at home or or anytime. Okay, anytime you can do it. Okay, just I'm not giving you a deadline. Okay. Okay. What for our activity? Okay. Explain what freedom means by the use of the letters of freedom. Make this an acrostic poem. Okay, word freedom. All right. So thank you so much for your time. It's already 12:25 in my time, my watch. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. And if you think my videos are useful and interesting, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so that you will be notified every time I upload new videos. Okay, so again, this is Teacher Jules, your wisdom amazing facilitator of learning.